If you're an artist and you put your artwork online, chances are you might run into a few trolls. Heck, maybe even been a troll once or twice. But believe it or not, critiquing and giving and receiving feedback is an art unto itself. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome, mad creators, to the underground laboratory where we create robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. We do that, we put that stuff out there in the world, and then in turn, we receive feedback. How we receive feedback and how we give feedback in return, well, that's up to us. Feedback can be powerful, it can be helpful, it can be constructive, it can be encouraging, it can be cruel, it can be depressing, it can be downright infuriating. But feedback is neutral. We can interpret it how we want. We can use it to lift us up, or we can have it bring us down. Now, there's good feedback and there's bad feedback. So what is good feedback? Well, I'm gonna give you a couple examples. So here's the first example. Your artwork is really great. I really love it. I really want to see more of it. So that's one example of feedback that you can get. Here's another one. I really like what I'm seeing in your art. I like your technique. I think you're a really good illustrator. And I love the way you've composed your pages, but your storytelling could use a little work. Your character design is really great, but I don't think your characters emote enough. I think if you can get them to emote a little more, I think if you can work on your storytelling, combine that with just the way how brilliant you are as an illustrator, I think you're gonna be a force to be reckoned with. So which of those two examples provides better feedback? Well, the first one was really positive. There wasn't anything negative about it, but good feedback doesn't always mean that it's positive. While the first example was nice to hear, it was very positive, it made me feel good to hear it, was it really that helpful? I mean, sure, it can kind of boost your ego, that's always good, but when you really think about it, did it give me anywhere to go? No, it's just like, oh, it's great, so where do I go from there? Just keep making great artwork, I guess. Or, and maybe the person is just being nice, and that's usually the kind of critique you're gonna get. But I feel the second example is going to be better in helping us improve on our artwork, giving us sort of a roadmap on what to do, what we can do next, what we can implement into our artwork. And good feedback, there's a way you can do this. Now, it's called a sandwich technique. This is pretty standard, but sometimes we forget to do that, especially online when we're just putting feedback directly out on the internet and comment sections or whatever. So you want to sandwich your technique with, first you want to say something positive, then you want to say something constructive. I don't want to say negative, but something that somebody can use, something that they can improve on. Call that out, let them know, yes, this is something you could use work on, and then roll that in, wrap that up with another positive statement about our artwork. And you can see when I said that how much that came off. It doesn't take you by surprise. You're not like, whoa, oh man, I really suck or whatever. You help them out by giving them a little positive encouragement, and then you can go into what could use some work on, and then you bring it back around. And this technique works really well. A lot of people that are really good at giving critiques and feedback, this is how you do it. So just keep that in mind when you're giving feedback. This is especially important online when you're just leaving comments and things like that, because there's no context behind that. You don't get to see the emotion in the person's face. You don't get to see any body language or anything like that. So those words that you put out there, if you're not careful about it, it can come off as cruel when you're actually just trying to help. I get comments in my comment section all the time, mostly positive, I think, because I put out positive message. I usually get positive stuff back. A lot of people say don't read the comments because they're so bad, and a lot of people put out negative content because that's what gets the views and everything. But because I put out positive stuff, I usually get positive response back. But every once in a while I'll get something that's kind of harsh to hear, and a lot of the times that doesn't come from a place of anger or that somebody doesn't like your content or whatever, but maybe I'll say something that they don't agree with. And when I get that, I usually come back. If I get something that sounds a little negative, I'll usually come back with a positive spin, and 9 times out of 10 they come back again and say, oh, just to let you know, I love your channel, I didn't really agree with you on this specific thing. But if they would have led with that, if they would have led, hey, I love your channel, I love what you're doing, but I'm not so sure I agree on this particular point, it would come off a little better, and it lets you know where you're coming from. So always keep that in mind when you're giving feedback, especially online. Now, if you want to give somebody feedback, the first thing you want to do is ask and be specific. Say, is it all right if I give you some honest feedback? That way they're open to it. They're not going to be caught off guard. They're not going to be taken aback or whatever. Hopefully not. But you always want to ask permission if you can give somebody some honest feedback instead of just throwing stuff out there that may not be wanted or solicited. Maybe they don't even want to hear about that. Maybe they're not interested in any kind of feedback. And I think most people are, if you put that out there rather than just coming straight out and like, yeah, your artwork could use a lot of work. I'm not really digging it, but yeah, maybe you could change a few things like that. That doesn't go, it's not something that somebody asked for. So make sure you ask for feedback before you give it. And I'm the kind of person that I don't usually give what I call honest feedback. I mean, I'm always trying to be encouraging and things like that. If I see somebody's artwork or if I'm carrying on a conversation, I try to look at what is the positive thing. Even if there's some things that they could work on, I usually don't throw that out unless somebody asks me specifically. I don't usually volunteer that information, and personally, I don't usually ask a lot of people, like, is it okay if I give you honest feedback? Although maybe I should do more of that. In the past, that's probably because I didn't think I was really good at giving great feedback, or I wasn't confident enough in my knowledge of art or comics or whatever it is. But since, I've been doing YouTube and I've been doing artwork for so long, I kind of had that little bit of that imposter syndrome, but when I really thought about it, look how, I've been doing this professionally for years and years and years, so I definitely have something that I can impart to people. And I do it all the time on YouTube, and I do that all free of charge and everything. But one thing that I started to do is I started doing coaching on my Patreon. So I have different tiers where you can join as like on a group mastermind call or a private one-on-one. And with that, I'm more open to giving honest feedback because I know, if you're signing up for that, first of all, you have to agree that you're okay with me giving you feedback. It's an understanding and everything. There's no gray area about it. I don't just have to come out and ask you. And sometimes I'll still do that. Is that okay? Are you okay if I go a little deeper on this? And sometimes I'll do that. But the other thing is these artists are actually paying for that advice. So I feel it's my obligation to give them, and it's something that I want to do. I'm not just obligated, but they are paying for that service, and it behooves me to give them honest feedback and to help them along on their journey because they're paying for this. If I just come out like, oh, your stuff's really good, it's getting better, I like it, that's not really helpful. I have to go really deep on what part of their artwork they need to improve on, what they're lacking in, what they could study up on, anything that's going to help them improve, because that's the whole idea behind it. It's not always easy to give feedback, and there are a lot of things you have to consider when doing it. Don't just say somebody's artwork is good. Your artwork is good because, and ask questions like, what were you trying to communicate when you put this, pen to paper in this certain panel or whatever? I like that, but I'm not quite sure. I want to know what your thoughts were, why you chose to do this the way you did. Ask questions and I like to make it more of a conversation. A lot of times when and we're going to get into receiving critiques, and a lot of times with receiving critiques, I just like to tell people to stand back and listen, but I do like to make it interactive when I'm giving critiques, and I like to get that feedback while I'm going. But that's up to the person giving the critique and the critiquee. Is that even a word, critiquee? I don't know. So how do you receive feedback? Well, first, just like if I was going to give feedback, I would ask for that. So if you want to receive feedback, you have to ask for it, and you have to let people know, I want honest feedback. Even if it stings, it's okay because I know I'm going to learn from it. And sometimes it will sting. And you have to make sure you're ready. If you are not ready to hear honest, real feedback, then don't ask for it. Make sure you're ready for that. And when you're getting that feedback, listen. Don't try to justify, don't try to defend yourself. A lot of times when I'm giving critiques, you get this one a lot. Well, that's just my style. That's the way I chose to do it. And style is one thing, but you still have to know the basics and everything. So, and the thing is, if you ask for feedback, then you get feedback. You get to step back and listen to that feedback. Don't try to defend yourself or justify or just chalk everything up to style. If you ask for feedback, then you have to listen to that feedback. Listen, receive it, take it all in, and then after that, after you've taken it all in without interrupting, unless if the person giving the critiques asks you questions, like I said, what were you thinking when you made this decision or whatever, I usually, like I said, just step back, listen to the critique, and then when you're done with that, then ask questions. Well, what about this? Or if I did this, would that help? That type of thing. And then after you're done, just process the whole thing. Take it all in and sit on it for a while and consider all this. Think, what can I do with this feedback? How can I use this to improve on my artwork? And just so you know, not all feedback is created equal. The feedback you get, it might not be good feedback, and different people will give different feedback depending on what they're coming from, and some of that feedback can be contradictory. I know when I was out showing my portfolio way back in the day when I was trying to break into comics, I would get some people that say, your stuff's it's too cartoony, and then I get somebody else saying, your stuff's not cartoony enough. You should study a little more on cartooning. I don't see a lot of emotions in your faces or whatever. So those are two diametrically opposed opinions, but they're just that, they're opinions. So you have to take that in and figure out, well, okay, I'm getting two different things. Maybe I need a third opinion or a fourth opinion, and go on from there. Get as much feedback as you can and take a consensus. If you start hearing the same things over and over again, if people are constantly telling you, I think you need to work on your anatomy, you need to brush up on that, here, take this Bridgman book, or go find a Bern Hogarth book or whatever, study up on anatomy. If you're getting that all the time, then chances are you probably need to work on your anatomy. And don't just listen to a voice, listen to voices. The more people you get telling you something, the more likely it is that you can use that information, because everyone's got their own opinions, everyone's got their own agendas. So if somebody just comes out and says, yeah, your artwork is not for me, I don't like it because of this or whatever, that's fine. Maybe you can take something from that, but who is this person? Who's the source? How qualified are they? Are they just some random person on the internet? Because there's trolls all over the place when you're on the internet. And I know it's hard, but try not to care too much about what trolls say, because the MO of a troll is just to destroy. You're creating. Artwork is about creating, and trolls are all about bringing things down and destroying things, and it's much easier to destroy things than to create. That's why there's so many trolls out there, and 9 times out of 10, the trolls, they aren't making anything, they aren't creating anything, they're just bringing people down. That's all they're there for. And here's the little secret about trolls, is that even if what they're saying resonates with you, even if you think it might be true, if maybe your artwork isn't that great, but at least you're out there putting things out there, and you're creating things, you're actually doing, you're creating rather than just tearing people down. And that's what trolls do, because they're too busy commenting on other people's stuff rather than doing their own thing. And it's anonymous, so who really cares? Most people that are trolls are hiding behind an avatar, something, that a fake name or whatever. So don't put too much faith in what trolls say. Because typically it's just one person, and you can get 10 positive comments and 1 negative one, and what one are you going to focus on? But that's just one. Focus on the positive stuff, especially if you're hearing the same things over and over again. If you're getting a lot of negative things, or if you're getting a lot of people telling you the same thing that might be negative, might be something that you can use to your advantage if you work on, then maybe work on that. But most of the time it's just that one person that says something that just throws everything off, despite all the positive things that people might say. And as I said, trolls are usually anonymous, they're usually hiding behind a screen name, but even people or artists in positions of authority, it doesn't always mean they know what they're talking about either. I mean, just think of how many people dismissed J.K. Rowling when she was trying to pitch Harry Potter. How many people, this will never work, this or that. You hear these stories all the time, and those people are probably kicking themselves. So not everyone, just because somebody's in like an editor or is in a position of authority, they don't always have all the answers. And what they're looking for might not be what the rest of the world is looking for. I remember when I was trying to break into comics, I was pitching this comic book called Retrofits, and I would go to it, and this is a little different. This is back when there were more people looking for independent voices, because I had my own idea. I wasn't necessarily going there like, oh, I want to draw Spider-Man or whatever. Nowadays, it's a little harder than that, because people usually don't want to see unsolicited ideas because it could be in conflict with something they already have in development, and it becomes a whole thing. But back then I could go through and do that. So I would have my little pitch Bible here of my comic book. You know, it's got pages, I talk all about it, and I would leave this. But before I do that, I give a little elevator pitch. I said, so this is my comic book Retrofits. It's about these teenage, they're like a teenage pop group from the 70s, and then one day they just up and disappear off the face of the earth, and then they reappear 25 years later, not knowing where they are. They have to adapt to this brand new world that they're not familiar with, and on top of that, out of nowhere, they have superpowers now. And so that was the idea. So, I mean, I had a better pitch. It's been a while since I pitched this one, so I'm a little rusty on it. But that's the general idea. And I remember getting a critique from an editor, and they said that's very contrived. And I had to stop and think about that, and I'm like, oh man, is it contrived? And you know, honestly, in retrospect, I don't think that was very good advice. One, because it didn't give me anything to work on. It was just like, yeah, I don't know, it seems a little contrived. Maybe you could scale back on this, or maybe work on this or whatever. That might have been better. But it was just like, yeah, that sounds very contrived, like you're trying too hard on this. So I really had to ask myself, well, is it contrived? Am I trying to be too clever? Am I trying to force this concept and put it together when, you know, at the expense of the story or whatever? And the thing is, as time went on, I started to notice, and I almost dismissed it. I mean, I was still working on it and everything, but I almost dismissed it, and then, yeah, maybe this just isn't good enough, based on just what one person said. And that was the only thing, but that thing stuck with me. It sticks with me today. That's why I'm bringing it up. But as time went on, I started to notice, because I pitched this way back in the early 90s, back when I was first trying to break into comics. And after that, like movies like Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, and all the sequels came out, which kind of had a similar theme to it. You know, here was this character out of time. He was from the 60s, thought out in modern times. It was more comical. It didn't have the superhero element or anything like that, but it was hugely successful. Also, just the whole 70s vibe with like, at that point later on, that 70s show became a big thing. And it was, I think, if I would have pursued it, if I would have put it out there, it could have been successful. It could have been something. And the other thing is that superheroes at that time, it was, you know, basically the image boom had just happened, and there was very little concept. I mean, some of the superheroes, they were just kind of rehashes of what, you know, Marvel or DC was doing, with a little more spin. I mean, very more dynamic with the drawing, and it was all about the art. And they really, I'm not to bash Image at that point in time, but most people would agree that the story wasn't that much, and there wasn't really anything new, I don't think. But later on, now you see on TV, there's tons of superhero stuff. I mean, you've got the Marvel Universe and all that, but then you see other things like Invincible and like The Boys and whatever the case is, trying to take a different spin on superheroes, where at that time that wasn't that prevalent. So I think my idea could have been, and maybe, you know, maybe it was ahead of its time. I don't know. But the point is, I let that one critique, that one comment get to me, instead of, you know, showing it to more people. And I did get other feedback and everything, but like I said, I kind of dwelled on that one thing, and that's definitely not what we want to do. We need to realize that these are just opinions. Everyone has different opinions, and different publishers or whatever, they're going to have different things they're looking for. So what might not work for one particular person doesn't necessarily mean there's not a market for it. And if you believe in something enough, you can publish it yourself. There's Kickstarter, there's all kinds of ways that we don't really have to worry about gatekeepers, although the critiques are helpful. I'm not gonna, you know, when you get a critique, an honest critique, a constructive criticism from somebody, whether it's an editor or whatever, it's helpful, and we need to take all that stuff in and not just focus on one particular thing. Find out what, like I said, what is the consensus of all the information that I'm getting, and how can we use that to better our artwork. And understand that the feedback we get, it's not just verbal. It's not just what somebody who looks at our artwork tells us. There's more to it. There's body language. If you're doing a show and, you know, people come by your table and then people are kind of like, if you get a lot of that, that could be you know, maybe that could be a good thing or not. I mean, start looking at how people react to your artwork. Even if they don't say anything, you can, you know, you might have people that just go up and they're just staring at, like if you're doing a show, you've got all your artwork, they're just staring at it, and then, you know, sometimes it's just like people pointing or nudging people, and it, like I said, it doesn't have to be verbal. A lot of times people will laugh, that's verbal, but there's a lot of body language that we can pick up on that'll give us some data, some feedback that we can use to figure out like what we're doing, if it's working or not. And speaking of data, that is another form of feedback that we can get through whatever, like I do YouTube, so I've got the YouTube algorithm. There's a lot of information that I can take from, and sometimes I don't look at that in the most positive light, because I do this channel and I've got, I don't know, I've got a certain number of subscribers, but my views don't really match up to with a lot of people with the same number of subscribers, and I'm just not getting the kind of views for the work that I put in. And in the past, I would always just blame that algorithm. I'd be like, okay, I'm doing everything right, I'm answering all my comments, I'm putting out good content, why isn't that? So I could take that data and say, oh, well, I'm doing everything that I can. I mean, I'm putting out great content that I put a lot of time into, I'm responding to comments, I'm interacting, I'm putting out great thumbnails, titles, all that stuff, but that's out of my control. If I do all that stuff and it's still not working, I could say the algorithm's out to get me, the algorithm only promotes like negative content putting out there on YouTube. I can take all that and, you know, maybe I could look at that and say, okay, maybe I need to do more like negative stuff or whatever, but that's not really what I want to do. So I have to ask myself, okay, the data says this, what I'm doing maybe not working for that data. Is it working for me? Is it something that I want to put out there? And then look at that data and try to figure, instead of just blaming it and saying there's nothing I can do, it's all beyond my control, it's all YouTube's algorithm, I'm just at the mercy of it. Maybe there's something in there I can find if I study a little more, and I think that's what I'm going to have to do, you know, as I continue to grow this channel and everything. But data is very powerful, and it's not just data is in terms of like algorithms and statistics and things like that. It's all data. It's whether it's the comments you're getting, whether it's the body language you're seeing, whether it's that it is that statistics. All this stuff is data that we can take in. It's all feedback. And you know, going back to YouTube with just like the dislikes, feedback is neutral. The dislike and the like button, there's, as far as YouTube looks at that doesn't matter. All it is engagement. So you can get tons of dislikes, more dislikes than you get likes, and it doesn't mean they're not going to promote your video more, because it's all engagement. If people don't like it, people are still reacting to it. And that's what you kind of have to realize with feedback that you're getting. And sometimes when you put stuff out there, whether it makes people angry or it gives them like a not so good feeling or whatever, if it affects them, then that's a form of feedback. So take all that information in and do with it what you want, and just realize how valuable this feedback is. Take it all in and figure out what can I do to use this to better myself as an artist. And one of the things that you can do as far as feedback is leave comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this episode. And like I mentioned, I am doing coaching on my Patreon, so if that's something you might be interested in, check it out. There are both group and individual mastermind tiers that you can join, and I will help you along with whatever it is, comics or anything like that. That is available to you. And like I said, just let me know in the comment section, what do you think of feedback? What do you think of critiques? What do you think of trolls? Anything that you want to know or want to talk about, discuss in the comment section, let me know. I try to get back to everyone. It might not be right away, but I will eventually get back to everyone. So leave a comment, let me know what you think, and yeah, that's all I got to say about feedback. I will see you later. That is all. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me at Serkworks on social media, and now you can support the work that I do on Patreon. Do you like making comics? Then go to Serkworks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more. And best of all, it's totally free.